Well, welcome back. I'm John Swaino, and this is...
I'm John Swaino. No, I'm Dave Teddy.
we've been together too long. We're starting to confuse each other. So, anyway, we're Two Beards and a Bible, and we're thankful that you've chosen to join in with us. We hope that it will be an edifying time that can build you up in the word of truth. I know that we will be built up in looking into the scriptures.
Absolutely.
So we are today in Matthew 5 again, continuing where we left off last time, and we're going to begin reading at verse 27. Whose turn is it to read?
It's my turn.
All right, we'll let you go ahead.
It says, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust after her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell." So let's talk about that little section.
All right.
The next section is going to talk about marriage. Well, I guess this kind of talks about marriage too, because that's what adultery is. So again, he talks about, in our last episode, we talked about murder, and how murder starts in the heart. And we referenced Cain and Abel. And Jesus brings it around and he talks about adultery. And he says that, that you heard it from a long time ago that, you shouldn't commit adultery. But then he gives this new teaching. He says, "But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart." And, basically, all you're missing is the opportunity. Mm-hmm. You've already done this thing. You just didn't have the opportunity.
Right. How clever is Satan? Looking around us today in our popular culture, what has become okay?
Pornography.
Basically. I mean, the dress, the attire that we see, especially among young people, some not so young people.
Yeah.
And the opportunities that are there for young men and women to commit this adultery in their heart.
And they got a phone with them that is a portal to it.
It's right there. And we have to be careful. You don't even have to try.
No.
When I turn on my computer, and one of the things that, we're posting this on YouTube, but one of the things that really bothers me about YouTube is that when I open up YouTube, up pops all of these suggestions for me to watch. And some of them are like, oh, close my eyes.
Yeah.
Yes. And we have to do that. We have to be those that say, oh, close my eyes, look the other way. We have to control our mind.
We have to be able to control ourselves. And one thing, a lot of people struggle with this sort of thing. And I heard it said one time, and I thought this was a good way to look at it, is, if you think about this, that, you're thinking about looking at something you ought not to look at. Think if your wife or your mother was standing there. Would you do that? Would you look at that thing? Probably not. Well, God's looking at you.
Right.
He is looking at you. We got to remember that.
And it's over time, it's gotten to be such a common thing that, yes, some would even look with their mother being there, or with their spouse. It has gotten to be acceptable. And in fact, you've heard it said boys will be boys, maybe. We've said that about in culture, in our culture, about young men, and we just say, well, they're just going to do that. And in fact, thinking back, it was almost a rite of passage in our younger years to go to a place where you could look upon these things.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And it is something that has just been normalized. And so when we read in the scriptures about these things, that is so foreign to what we see around us in the world today.
It's more accessible now than it ever has been, but it's always been accessible.
Right.
This is not a new thing. It's an old thing. That's why they say prostitution is the world's oldest business, right?
Yeah.
Maybe right after banking.
Yeah. And it is, technology more on that line, is wonderful. I mean, we're using some technology here today to be able to record. You know, I am so thankful for computers and the internet, that when I'm, you know, studying, when I'm preparing a sermon, I can go straight to the internet and I can type in my thought. It gives me the verse. You know, I don't even have to remember the address to the verse. In a way, it makes you lazy. But it's a wonderful thing to be able to do that.
You know, I see that we've got our camera sitting on a Strong's Exhaustive Concordance.
Right.
And I have one of those at home, but I haven't opened it in ages because, you know, with a computer you can keyword search the Bible.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, underneath of the Strong's is the Knave's Topical Bible. Yes. And over there is the Vine's Dictionary. And I used to use those all the time. But yeah, now I go to it's right there.
Yeah, you go to the Google.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do too.
Yeah, and it is so helpful, but at the same time, it can be a hindrance.
Yeah. He says here, he talks about popping some eyes out. He says about your right eye. He says if your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out.
Yeah.
Well, how do I know which eye I'm looking at something with?
Right.
Is that a literal command?
Well, you know, it is a parable.
It is.
You know, so it's in some way figurative language, but I got to tell you, when I really stop and think about it, if I can't control my eyes, maybe I'd be better off without them.
Yeah.
You know, I know that sounds harsh, and maybe, you know, as we read the scriptures there, it was you know, obviously a parable, and it was meant to create an understanding in the people's minds, in our minds. But I if you want to take that one literally, I think you probably could.
I think it really just speaks to the seriousness of it. You know, that's what it's really talking about.
Right.
So, got a little noise in the background here because John's wife is packing up for clothes.
Well, hopefully the microphone didn't pick it up.
Well, it's okay either way. So what does he say? He continues on here and he talks about, we talk about our eye being plucked out. He talks about your right hand. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. But, you know, I think you could take it literally. I take it as this is a serious business. That's
right. And that's the most likely, you know, it is a parable, so
yeah,
it is just for our understanding.
Yeah, the idea is that, you know, the most important thing is for us to get to heaven and not go to hell.
Right.
That's the most important thing. So
and you know, we rely on our hands. We rely on our eyes. You know, I have a relative that is blind, and that really affects her life.
Yeah.
You know, and in fact, you know, she's paralyzed to some degree, and that without the use of that limb, you know, that presents some real major obstacles in her life. So yes, we can, as we understand the usefulness of our hands, you know, then it's in our eyes, that really does speak to the seriousness of it. Now, is this telling us that in order to be right with God, you've got to be right-handed?
No, I don't think that's what it's talking about.
My grandfather used to pick on me because he was left-handed, and he would always say that you're supposed to be left-handed.
Well, I always tell my uncle Vern is left-handed, and I always tell him he's wrong-handed.
There you go.
Let's go ahead and John, you want to read 31? Oh, there's just a few for 31 and 32.
Furthermore, it has been said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that whoever divorces his wife for any reason, except sexual immorality, causes her to commit adultery. And whoever marries a woman who is divorced commits adultery.
So this kind of gives us some directions on when we would be allowed to divorce our spouse.
Right.
And really, it's the only direction that's given. And I don't think I was looking in my Bible here to see if I didn't write down any of the other references where Jesus talks about divorce. I know there's at least one more place where he talks about. He teaches the same thing.
Right.
Oh, maybe I do have a Matthew chapter 19 I have written down. Let's see what that says. For some reason, I thought I wrote that down somewhere. Oh yeah, it says. So he says, "Have you?" In chapter 19, he says, "Have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female, and for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh, so that they are no longer two but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let not man separate." He says, "Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, permitted you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery, and whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery." So that's basically that's more or less all of Jesus' teaching on divorce.
Right. Yeah, and we can see from that, and we get when you read the entirety of the scripture, when you put those verses into context, we get the understanding that God really would rather us work things out. Because of the hardness of their hearts, Moses allowed them to divorce.
Yeah.
And so we should be those that desire to work those things out. We're human beings. We're going to have obstacles.
Yeah.
We're going to be stupid from time to time, and we need to be able to work things out. I have friends that were divorced because they just decided they didn't get along anymore. And sadly, some people, and this is a hard subject, sadly, some people enter into marriage too quickly without understanding the gravity of the situation, and they maybe join themselves to somebody that is abusive.
Yeah.
They join themselves into a situation that is just awful. And so young people, old people, if you're thinking about marriage, take it very seriously.
It's serious
business. Know what
business,
you're getting into. And I can tell you that I am extremely thankful that I married who I did, because, and I think you would say the same thing about your wife, that their life could have turned out very differently.
Yeah.
And
that's not to say that my wife and I always get along and always agree about everything, because we don't.
Right.
And I think that's normal.
Right.
But that...
I'll just tell you right now, I didn't pick this color out.
You didn't. I like that color.
It works, but it took me a while.
Yeah. I mean, you've heard the term "pick your battles."
Right.
That's the best marriage advice. I'll tell you, my dad was divorced, but he did give me some great marriage advice. I remember I was at my wedding, and I said, "Dad, do you have any marriage advice for you?" And he goes, "Listen," "if your wife packs you something in your lunch that you don't like," he said, "just throw it away and don't say anything."
There you go.
And, I mean, we gotta pick our battles,
Right. And, being human beings, we have our stubbornnesses to us, and I just made that word up.
Yeah.
But we have to learn to bear with one another.
Right.
We're told that in the scriptures, amongst the brethren, to bear with one another.
Yeah. And marriage can be one of the most wonderful things, that there is. God gave us marriage.
Right.
He gave us, this ability to share all sorts of, things with our spouse. Mm-hmm. All the pleasures in life we can share with our spouse.
Right. And and I'm gonna, just a qualifier, it is totally understood. I think both of us understand that in life there are surprises. I've known people that had what seemed to be a strong marriage for 20 some years, and then suddenly something happens with one of the two in that party, and it's perhaps unavoidable because of their infidelity, that divorce might happen. And that's a sad thing, but just read and study. That's for a different lesson to really get into all of that.
Yeah.
But the gravity of marriage, it's a very serious thing.
Yeah.
And if we take it seriously from the beginning, and we don't have the mindset of, like I've heard some people say, well, talking to someone who's going to get married, saying, well, they're a good starter husband or a good first wife. And that's just setting it up for failure.
Oh.
It's the wrong way to go into something like that. If that's the way that your mind is thinking, don't get married.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and basically to wrap this all up, Jesus only taught one thing about divorce. There was only one reason that you could get divorced, and that was for adultery. It's the only reason.
Right.
And every other, I think we, excuse me, we sometimes try to come up with all these other reasons why somebody might get divorced or try to justify things.
And those other reasons may sound logical in our minds.
But that's the only thing that Jesus gave us.
Yeah.
So he was silent about all these other deals. So we only have this instruction.
And Matthew 28:18 says that Christ was given how much authority?
All.
And
how much does that leave for me and you?
Doesn't leave us any.
Yeah, leaves us no authority. So that's what Jesus said. You want to get divorced? You only have one reason that you could do it for. How are we doing time? Oh, we're at 16 minutes. Oh,
we got some time.
So let's talk about oaths. So all of these, it's interesting. All of these things here in Matthew 5, they kind of are along the same lines. So Jesus forbids oaths, and I guess oaths were a big thing back in the Jewish days. He says, "Again, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform your oaths to the Lord. But I say to you, do not swear at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. Nor shall you swear by your head, because you cannot make one hair white or black. But let your yes be yes and your no be no. For whatever is more than these is from the evil one." Mm-hmm. So, one thing I thought this was kind of interesting. He says, "Do not swear at all." And when we talk about, I don't think that's what he's talking about. As far as when we in our culture talk about swearing, we're talking about saying words we ought not to say, right?
Right.
We're talking about cussing,
right,
or cursing. I think in this context, he's talking about making some oath that you're going to do something.
Right.
You ever seen the Three Stooges where they're in the courtroom and the guy goes, "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?" And he says it so fast and Curly can't understand him.
Right.
He's got his hand on the Bible.
Right. I can think of a movie where there was a courtroom setting and the person on the stand felt that they needed to lie, and it was a preacher. And instead of swearing on the Bible, he said, "Well, I brought my own Bible, but it wasn't the Bible," and he swore on some other book, and then lied. But that statement of let your yes be yes and your no be no, for whatever is more or less than that is from Satan. What it reminds me of in James, and I'm over here looking for it, where it says that a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways.
Well, you can quote it. You just can't find out where it's at.
I'm bad with addresses.
I know how you are.
But anyways, we understand that a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways, and there again we see here Christ teaching that very same thing, that we need to. And again, it also goes to the idea that we know who we are. That we are not one that we can't change.
Right.
The color of our hair. Who are we to say that, that we are going to promise, even that I'm going to wake up tomorrow? And I think one of the brethren at Medina is in the habit of saying and has made a good statement of that, and I've adopted it. And I think it's a good thing to say, if the Lord wills, I will do this or that. We find that in the scriptures. If the Lord wills, if the Lord wills, we will do this or that and go to this place and buy and sell and make a profit. and everything that we do. If the Lord wills, we'll finish this video.
Yeah, exactly. So if you were in court and you were testifying, would you put your hand on the Bible and swear to tell the truth?
No.
I wouldn't either.
Yeah.
I would just say, yes, I will tell the truth.
And that's one of those things that, we don't, I've heard it said before, people have said that I affirm that I will tell the truth.
Yeah.
And that's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I find that interesting. It's, and I don't know where that practice came from. You go to the court and they take the Bible and they, I don't know if they still do that or not.
Yeah. Well, the whole idea of venerating that book.
Yeah.
Those, in some places, I don't suggest that we do that because it's a useful book and it's got the power to save our souls.
Yes.
The Word of God. But if we throw that book out in the woods, some people would be very angry because we defiled that paper and that leather. But it's just the Word that's important.
Yeah.
And God doesn't need our printing to sustain His Word.
Yeah.
He's going to sustain that.
Let's go on and talk about the next one. Going the second mile. And if you want to read from 38 to 42.
Okay. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, not to resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. If anyone wants to sue you and take away your tunic, let him have your cloak also. And whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him who asks you, and from him who wants to borrow from you, do not turn away.
Okay. So he talks about this idea, the eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and I had to look that up. That's in 3 different places, in Exodus 21:24, Leviticus 24:19, and Deuteronomy 19:21. And that idea of, if somebody does something to you, you do the same back to them.
Right.
So Jesus kind of says, here's a different way to do this. I'm giving you a new teaching for this. Mm-hmm. He says, don't resist an evil person. He says, if they slap you on one cheek, let them have the other one. Mm-hmm. I don't like that.
Right. It kind of goes against, where the way we've been raised, perhaps.
It is.
It's, yeah. And just human nature. I was talking to you earlier about the debacle with me buying shoes on the internet that came from China and they didn't get what I ordered, and I've lost some money in that situation. And there's the part of me deep inside that wants revenge on that, but understanding that revenge is not mine. That so what? We'll turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
And that's hard. That
it is.
That just like when you're talking about Cain and Abel, Cain was told, you can do well. I know this is a hard thing. He was struggling with doing what the Lord asked him to do and just working a little harder and doing well. And if he did well, he would be okay. And if we follow the Lord's teaching as well, I know, even though it may be difficult, we'll be okay as well.
He talks a lot. I mean, this really just speaks to what our attitude's got to be. Mm-hmm. And all of this stuff, going all the way back through Matthew 5, where he talks about the Beatitudes, and then he talks about the kind of attitude we ought to have. Mm-hmm. And he talks about us being, salt of the earth. He talks us about, that Jesus came to fulfill the law. He talks about murder and adultery and all of these things that come from inside of us. Mm-hmm. It's all of these things are about controlling about self-control, basically, right?
Right.
Self-control and doing the right thing. And that's kind of what he's getting at here.
Yeah.
He also talks about going the second mile. He says, compelling you to go 1 mile. And I guess that was a thing back in Roman times. Did you ever hear about that?
No.
It was like a Roman officer or some official could go into a city and they could make you, as another citizen, carry their stuff for a mile.
Huh.
So they could compel them to carry your load for a mile. But he says, if somebody asks you to do that,
right,
go 2 with them. Double down.
Right.
If somebody asks you to help them out, go above and beyond.
Right.
And again, it's our attitude, right? Have you ever had somebody ask you to help them, and you're just like, come on,
right?
I mean, because I've done that,
right?
Somebody will ask me to do something, and I'm just like, again, that's the wrong attitude,
right?
It's the wrong attitude for us to have. I think we've all felt that way before,
right? Yep. Well, and the last, I think, just to finish out that little section there, in verse 43, I think we stopped at verse 42, for you have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. For he makes the sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and the unjust. And that idea of loving your enemies, and praying for those who persecute you, that's hard stuff.
Yeah.
When we run across in times gone by in business, I've had people that were not fond of me, and were those that were trying to trip me up in some way or whatever, and it's hard to like those people.
It is. It is.
But we are compelled by the Lord to do just that.
Yeah. He says there that for if you love those who love you, what reward have you, right? You're always going to love those that are going to love you.
Right.
He says, do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet your brethren only, what do you do more than others? Right? We're supposed to be a light. We're supposed to be salt. Right. We're supposed to go above and beyond what everybody else does.
And just as we have trouble, understanding, how can we do that? When we do that, we are setting an example for others. They're going to pay attention.
Yeah.
Because they're going to understand, that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah. He says, therefore you should be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect. And I've got a little note here. I wrote down in there, I says, our motive is to do good, not to look good to others. That's a little note I wrote in my Bible. Mm-hmm. But that's really, that kind of sums up those thoughts.
Right.
We're supposed to be the one that's trying to do good.
Right.
Well, John, I think we've about run out of time again.
I think so. Yep, we're at 28 minutes, so that's enough. I'm sure you have something else to do, but I hope you do join us next time. I hope that you find these studies to be edifying. Again, if you have questions, we would be glad to answer your Bible questions with Bible answers, and we would just love to study the Scriptures further with you. So by all means, reach out to us, and you can find our information on our YouTube channel there. So without further ado, have a good day, and Lord willing, we'll see you next time.